Hare Krishna, Namaste.
Chapter 13 is entitled as Kshetrajna Yoga, also as Prakriti Purusha Vibhaga Yoga, also as Prakriti Purusha Viveka Yoga. Sloka 14, Part 2. Sarvataḥ pāṇi-pādaṁ tat sarvato kṣi-śiro-mukham sarvatah śrutimal loke sarvam āvṛtya tiṣṭhati. Everywhere are his hands and legs, his eyes, heads and faces, and he has ears everywhere. In this way, the Supersoul exists, pervading everywhere. In the previous session, we learned the three classifications of the Jivatma. All three are equal in Swarupa, that they are all Anu, they are all minute. All three are subordinate to the Supreme Lord. All three are made of knowledge, jnana, and all three possesses knowledge, the consciousness, the jnana. All three of them are eternal, hence the knowledge they possess is also eternal. The difference among these three? The consciousness that Bhattatma has is restricted by the karma, where the consciousness, the knowledge of Muktatma is not restricted because they are free of karma, whereas the consciousness of Nitya Atma are never restricted because they never got influenced by karma. When we compare these Atmas with the Supreme Lord, Ishvara, the Jivatmas are Anu, minute, whereas the Supreme Lord is Vibhu, meaning big or pervaded everywhere. The Supreme Lord is not restricted by anything, by time or place. The Supreme Lord doesn't need to have a body, senses to access anything that would normally a Baddhatma would need to access anything. The Lord can walk without legs. The Lord can lift things without hands. The Lord can see things without eyes. The Lord can hear without ears. In other words, He is not conditioned that He can only hear, smell, touch, walk, lift by these sense objects. Without them, He can still do it. Number one, He can do by His sankalpa, by His will, supreme will. For example, if I have to drink water, I need to get up, open the tap, fill the glass and pour it into the mouth to quench my thirst. If the Lord wants to do something like this, He doesn't need to physically get up, walk, open the tap, get the water, pour it into the mouth. It all happens just by His sankalpa, by His will. And the second point is, when the Upanishad says that He doesn't have legs, He doesn't have hands, He doesn't have eyes, He doesn't have ears, what it means is also that He doesn't have eyes like you and I. He doesn't have ears like you and I. It doesn't have hands and legs like you and I, which are all made of material elements. He has spiritual body, which is fully made of Suddha Sattva. There is no mix of any lower modes like Rajoguna or Tamoguna. Therefore, the Baddhatmas can never be like the Lord. This verse is not talking about the Baddhatmas, as Prabhupada has very clearly stated in his purport that the Supreme is different from the individual soul. The Supreme Lord can extend his hand without limit. The individual soul cannot. This is the omnipotence of the Lord. Even though he is situated in his own abode, far, far away from earth, he can extend his hand to accept what anyone offers. That is his potency. All the acharyas clearly agree that the conditioned soul, Baddhatma, cannot be everywhere. At the same time, they cannot have hands, legs, eyes, heads, faces, ears everywhere. It is only the Supreme Lord who can be so. Sripad Ramanujacharya in his Gita commentary gives the viewpoint of how the Muktatma, the liberated soul, can have its hands, legs, eyes, ears, etc. everywhere. So immediately the question comes in our mind that in liberated state, the Atma doesn't have senses, no material body, then how can it be said that it has all the indriyas everywhere? The answer is, for the liberated soul, Muktatma, they can perform the task that can be done using the hands, feet, ears, etc. without having to have these faculties. For me to lift something, I really need to have hands. For me to go to another room, I need to have legs. But for the Muktatma, they can do these things without having hands, legs, without having these faculties, which is not otherwise possible in the conditioned stage, in the Baddhatma state. As it is stated in the Mundaka Upanishad, Tada vidvan punya pape viduya niranjana paramam samyam upaiti. One who has understood that Brahman, one who has got the devotion, he gets free from punya, papa, is uncontaminated, he becomes equal with that Brahman. This does not mean that the Jivatma becomes God or one with God. What it means is what we saw earlier, that the Jivatma, when it gets liberated, it gets certain qualities of the Supreme Lord. Apahata papma vijaraha vimrutyuhu vishokaha abhikitsaha abhipāsaha satyakamaha satyasankalpaha sonvestavyaha. The Muktatma will have no sin, no old age, no death, no lamentation, no hunger, no thirst, whose every desire is truth and whose every desire is fulfilled. Only some of these qualities are bestowed upon the Muktatma. Because of this reason, that the Upanishad says that it becomes equal to Brahman. Not to say that the Jivatma after liberation became God or becomes one with God, which is not the case. The Jivatma, when it's liberated, they remain to be individual Atma. They can never become God. They are equal in some aspects that we just discussed. But the Supreme Lord has unlimited qualities, which the Muktatma nor the Nityatma can have them. For example, Karanatvam, Jagat Karanatvam, Sarvesharatvam, Sarva Karma Samaradhyatvam, Sarva Karma Palapradatvam, Sarva Adharatvam, Sarva Sariratvam. That is, He is the cause of the creation. He is the controller of everything. He is the one who is worshipped by all Vedic rituals. He is the one who grants the fruits of all the Vedic rituals. He is being the one who bears all the entities. He is the one who possesses everyone within him. These are the Supreme Lord's uniqueness, which Muktatma or Jivatma can never have them. But still, the Upanishad says, also we have seen in Bhagavad Gita, that the liberated souls are Brahman. And when it is said, it is Aupacharikam, meaning it's just secondary, not the principal meaning of that particular term. So, the Jivatma in its liberated state, that is, the Muktatma, are not restricted by their karma. Because they are not restricted by their karmas, they are karma free, their consciousness, the jnana, can manifest to its maximum capacity. It is not restricted by the body and senses due to the karma. Hence, whatever a Baddhatma can do with its senses, the Muktatma can do the same without the senses with the consciousness, extended consciousness. It doesn't have to have these senses to perform any activity. It is not that Atma, the Muktatma, extends or becomes big. Atma remains as Atma in its minute Anu Swarupa, but its knowledge manifests without a restriction, by which he is present everywhere, and whatever one can do with the eyes, ears, legs, feet, etc., through this extended knowledge, the Muktatma can perform those activities. In that sense, the Muktatma's ears, hands, legs, etc. are everywhere. Not literally everywhere, through their consciousness, which has manifested without any restriction. Krishna says in the 14th chapter that we'll be seeing in the second sloka that idam jnanam upāsritya mama sādharmyam āgataha. That is, one can attain to the transcendental nature like my own. These are the words of Krishna. Again, the Jivatma never becomes Paramatma, never becomes God, or doesn't become one with God. Jivatma remains as Anu, minute, never becomes Vibhu. Jivatma's knowledge, the consciousness, is what gets manifested, by which it can perform the activities even without the senses, requirement of any of the senses. Since it is not restricted, which means it's pervaded everywhere. Because it is pervaded everywhere, the activities are not restricted by time or place. Hence, its hands are everywhere, feet are everywhere, eyes and ears are everywhere. Meaning, those activities that can be performed using these organs, senses, can be performed through the consciousness of the liberated soul, Muktatma. Why such great thing is being bestowed upon the Muktatma? It is simply to engage in the service of the Supreme Lord. Right now, in the conditioned state, only eyes can see, nose can smell, ears can hear, etc. The eyes cannot smell, the nose cannot see, the ears cannot taste, the tongue cannot hear, the hands cannot walk, the legs cannot lift. But in the liberated state, each and every sense are endowed with multifunction. The eyes can taste, hear, smell. Likewise, the ears can taste, smell, etc. But what is the purpose of this? This is given just so that the Muktatma is fully engaged in the service of the Lord. Whereas when the liberated soul gets its spiritual form, they can perform any activities. Each of their senses can perform other functionalities of the other senses. All these things happens by the will of the Muktatma, Sankalpa of the Muktatma. And the only purpose is to get engaged in the service of the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, these are not even exercised by the Muktatmas. Now the next question comes, that the Lord can perform activities without the senses. Does it mean that if he does has the senses, the body, will it restrict him to perform the activities that's been mentioned? That he can do everything everywhere. This will be discussed in the next sloka, sloka number 50. Sarvataḥ pāṇi-pādaṁ tat sarvato kṣi-śiro-mukham sarvata śrutimal loke sarvam āvṛtya tiṣṭhati.
Namaste. Hare Krishna.